Imagine the perfect husband, charming, composed, grieving the sudden disappearance of his wife. But what if that mask hid a killer? In one shattering moment, his calm crumbles as police reveal a chilling discovery. This is a story of deception, buried secrets, and a truth that will leave you questioning everything. Stay with us. The events depicted in this video are based on a true story. To respect the privacy and sensitivity of those involved, certain names, locations, and details have been altered. This content includes discussions and reenactments of violent crimes, which may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Stay with us as we uncover the haunting truth on True Crime Unknown. In a stark, fluorescent-lit interrogation room in Willow Creek, Ohio, Michael Harper sat with his hands clasped tightly, his knuckles pale against the metal table. His face was a carefully crafted mask of sorrow, his eyes glistening with what seemed like genuine tears. For weeks, he told police the same story. His wife, Emily, had gone for a jog on a humid summer evening and never returned. His voice was steady, his grief convincing. He was the picture of a devastated husband, pleading for answers. But on August 3, 2023, everything changed. A detective leaned across the table, his voice low and deliberate. "Michael, we found her. Emily's body was recovered this morning." The words sliced through the air like a knife. Michael's breath caught, his eyes widened, and for a fleeting moment, his composure shattered. His hands trembled, his jaw clenched, and the truth he'd buried deep began to surface. This is the story of a man who thought he'd outsmarted everyone, until the moment he knew it was all over. Michael and Emily Harper were the epitome of suburban bliss in Willow Creek, a quiet town where everyone knew their neighbors. Their two-story colonial home, with its neatly trimmed hedges and blooming flower beds, was the kind of place that made passers-by envious. Emily, 32, was the heart of the community. Her warm smile and infectious laugh lit up every room. She organized block parties, baked cookies for the kids next door, and always had time for a chat over coffee. Michael, 35, was more reserved, a software engineer who preferred tinkering in the garage to socializing. Together they seemed perfect. "They were the couple everyone wanted to be," said their neighbor Sarah, her voice tinged with disbelief in a later interview. But perfection is often a facade. Behind closed doors, their marriage was unraveling. Emily's text to her sister Jen revealed a growing unease. "He's always watching me," she wrote in one message. "I can't even go to the store without him asking where I've been." Friends noticed subtle changes. Emily's laughter was less frequent, her eyes distant. Michael's jealousy, once dismissed as protectiveness, had morphed into something darker. He didn't like her talking to male co-workers, didn't trust her to go out alone. "I feel like I'm losing myself," Emily confided to Jen in a late-night call. On June 12, 2023, the facade crumbled entirely. It was a sticky summer evening, the kind where crickets hum and the air feels heavy with secrets. At 10:47 p.m., Michael called 911, his voice trembling with panic. "My wife, she didn't come home," he told the dispatcher. "She went for a jog around 7 and just vanished. Her phone's off. Please, you have to find her." Officers arrived to find Michael pacing the driveway, his shirt untucked, his eyes red as if he'd been crying. He said he'd been in the garage all evening working on a car engine. Emily's Toyota was parked in the driveway, her purse still inside with her wallet and keys. There was no sign of a struggle, no forced entry, no ransom note. To the police, it was a mystery with no clear starting point. To Michael, it was the beginning of a dangerous performance. The disappearance of Emily Harper gripped Willow Creek. Volunteers flooded the town, combing through the jogging trail she loved, a winding path through a park lined with oak trees. Divers searched Lake Willow, its surface shimmering under the summer sun. Missing person posters went up everywhere, Emily's green eyes staring out from telephone poles and shop windows. Michael played his role to perfection. He stood before news cameras, clutching a photo of Emily, his voice breaking as he pleaded for her safe return. "She's my everything," he said, tears streaming down his face. "If anyone knows anything, please come forward." The town rallied around him, bringing casseroles and offering prayers. But detectives weren't so easily swayed. There was something about Michael's grief that felt off. His answers were too polished, his emotions too controlled. "What time did she leave?" an officer asked during an early interview. 7 p.m., Michael replied without hesitation. "She kissed me and said she'd be back in an hour." As the weeks dragged on with no trace of Emily, the investigation turned its focus to Michael. Detectives dug into his alibi, and it quickly began to fray. A neighbor's security camera, tucked discreetly above a garage door, showed Michael's black sedan pulling out of the driveway at 8:03 p.m. that night, not parked in the garage as he claimed. "I might have gone to get gas," he said when confronted, but his credit card record showed no purchases. Then came a more damning discovery. Michael's phone had pinged a cell tower in Blackwood Forest, a remote area 20 miles from Willow Creek, at 9:42 p.m. on June 12. "Why was your phone out there, Michael?" a detective asked, her voice sharp. Michael's jaw tightened, his eyes darting to the floor. "I don't know," he mumbled. "Maybe I drove around looking for her." But his story was crumbling and the police knew it. The investigation deepened. Detectives interviewed Emily's friends, her co-workers, her sister. Jen's voice shook as she revealed a painful truth. Emily had been planning to leave Michael. "She was terrified of him," Jen said, clutching a tissue. "She told me he'd threatened her, said she'd never be free of him." Emily had been saving money in secret, planning to move to an apartment in Cleveland. She'd even contacted a divorce lawyer. The police searched the Harper home, combing through every drawer and closet. They found nothing obvious, no murder weapon, no bloodstains on the carpet. But in the trunk of Michael's sedan, hidden beneath a tarp, forensic technicians discovered something chilling. Traces of blood, too small to identify without a body, but enough to set alarm bells ringing. "It could be from a cut," Michael insisted, his voice rising. "I work in the garage all the time." But his explanations were growing weaker, his confidence eroding. The case was maddeningly circumstantial. Without Emily's body, the police had no concrete evidence to tie Michael to a crime. He seemed to know this, his demeanor growing bolder with each interview. He'd walk into the station with a faint smirk, answering questions with the same rehearsed precision. "I ascertain I loved her," he'd say, his voice dripping with sincerity. "I'd never hurt her." But the detectives were relentless. They re-interviewed neighbors, one of whom recalled hearing raised voices from the Harper house the night Emily vanished. Another mentioned seeing Michael washing his car at midnight, an odd task for a man whose wife was missing. The cell tower data, the security footage, the blood, all pointed to Michael, but it wasn't enough. He was slipping through their fingers and he knew it. Everything changed on August 3, 2023. A hiker in Blackwood Forest, 22 miles from Willow Creek, was following a trail when his dog began pawing at a pile of leaves. Curious, he brushed the debris aside and froze. Beneath the leaves was a shallow grave, the earth freshly disturbed. It was Emily. Her body was wrapped in a blue tarp, her hands carefully folded across her chest. Around her neck was the locket she never removed, a silver heart engraved with "Forever Yours," a gift from Michael on their 5th anniversary. The medical examiner's report was grim. Emily had been strangled, her death violent and intimate. The locket, clutched tightly in her hand, seemed to tell a story of its own, a final act of defiance, a refusal to be forgotten. The discovery sent shockwaves through Willow Creek. Candlelight vigils sprang up, neighbors gathering to mourn the woman who'd been their friend, their confidant. Emily's face, once bright on missing posters, now haunted the town in a different way. For the police, the grave was the missing piece. They had a body, a crime scene, and a mountain of circumstantial evidence pointing to one man. Michael was called into the station for what he thought was another routine interview. He walked in with the same calm he'd worn like armor, sipping a coffee and offering a tight smile. But the air in the interrogation room was different this time, thicker, heavier. The detectives were ready to end the game. "Michael, we found her," the lead detective said, his voice steady. He slid a photo across the table, a close-up of the locket, its engraving clear as day. "Emily's body was in Blackwood Forest, right where your phone pinged that night." Michael's face froze. His coffee cup slipped from his hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud. "No, you're lying," he stammered, but his voice was unsteady, his eyes wild. The detective pressed harder. "The locket, Michael. Forever yours." She was still wearing it. Care to explain? The room seemed to shrink around him. His carefully rehearsed story unraveled as the truth clawed its way out. "It was an accident," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I didn't mean to." He buried his face in his hands, sobbing as the weight of his guilt crushed him. In the hours that followed, Michael's confession poured out. He and Emily had argued that night in their kitchen. She told him she was leaving, that she'd already packed a bag and contacted a lawyer. "I couldn't let her go," he said, his voice hollow. In a blind rage, he'd grabbed her, his hands closing around her throat. When he realized what he'd done, panic set in. He wrapped her body in a tarp, drove to Blackwood Forest, and buried her under the cover of darkness. He'd cleaned the trunk, rehearsed his story, and played the grieving husband for weeks. He thought he'd gotten away with it. But the evidence was overwhelming. The cell tower data, the security footage, the blood in the trunk, and now Emily's body with the locket that tied it all back to him. Michael Harper was arrested that night, charged with first-degree murder. The trial, which began in February 2024, captivated the nation. Prosecutors painted a chilling portrait of a man consumed by control, unable to accept Emily's desire for freedom. They held up the locket in court, its silver heart gleaming under the courtroom lights. This was Emily's voice, the prosecutor said, her voice steady, a reminder that she fought to be remembered. Jurors wept as the evidence mounted. The cell tower data placing Michael in Blackwood Forest, the blood in his trunk matching Emily's DNA, the security footage destroying his alibi. The defense argued it was a crime of passion, not premeditated, but the jury saw through it. On March 15, 2024, Michael was convicted and sentenced to life without parole. As the verdict was read, he stared at the floor, his face blank, his world reduced to a prison cell. Willow Creek struggled to heal. Emily's absence left a void that no verdict could fill. Her sister, Jen, channeled her grief into action, founding a non-profit to support victims of domestic violence. Emily was so much more than this tragedy, Jen said at a memorial, her voice breaking. She was kind, brave, and deserved so much more. Vigils continued for months, the town gathering to light candles and share memories of the woman who'd touched so many lives. But the question lingered, how had it come to this? How had a marriage that seemed so perfect turned so deadly? Michael's jealousy, his need for control, had festered in the shadows, hidden behind closed doors. His story was a warning, a reminder that the people we think we know can harbor the darkest secrets. What pushes someone to cross that unthinkable line? Was it a moment of rage or a darkness that grew over years? Could Emily's friends and family have seen the signs in time to save her? These are the questions that haunt us, the threads we pull at to understand the human heart. We want to hear from you. What do you think drove Michael to this horrific act? Were there warning signs that went unnoticed? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to True Crime Unknown for more stories that peel back the layers of the human psyche.